Morning. Welcome everyone to the meeting of the Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny Panel. Can I remind everybody to put your phones on silent? And before we move on to the formal agenda, I'd like that we do a round of introductions. So I'm Councillor Zarina Amin, Chair of this panel.
Councillor Tim Bamford, Denverdale Councillor.
Councillor Donna Bellamy, Home Valley North Councillor. Councillor Munro, Almonbury Ward. Thank you.
Chris Friend, Co-op T.
And can we just have the gentleman at the back there, please?
Albert Huey, I'm on work experience in the governance team.
Can officers and the panel member, please?
My name is Councillor Moses Crook, Home Valley South, and I'm here because I'm Cabinet Member for Transport.
I'm Lucy Wade, I'm an officer in the Transport Strategy and Policy team.
I'm Rory Davis, I'm the Transport Strategy and Policy Manager.
Morning everyone, David Wellman, Interim Director for Regeneration and Skills at Kirklees Council.
I'm Jenny Bryce-Chan, Governance Officer.
And we believe we have members of the public as well. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you.
Julia Roebuck, co-founder of Thread Republic, CIC.
Chloe Williams, Children's Art School.
I'm Andrew Wilson.
Thank you. We've just had a few additions. Can we just have some introductions, please?
Councillor Harry McCarthy from Conn Valley Ward.
Cathal Burke, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee.
Thank you. Membership of the committee, can I ask the Governance Officer, have we any apologies for the meeting?
No apologies received, Chair.
Minutes of the previous meeting, are we okay to approve those? Can we do by show of hands? Approved, thank you. Declarations of interest, if any members have any interest to declare, please fill in the relevant form and submit that to Jenny at the end of the meeting. Admission of the public. Are there any no exclusions of the public items, and all agenda items will be considered in public session? Jenny, have we received any deputations or petitions?
None received, Chair.
Jenny, have we received any questions from members of the public?
We do have a member of the public with us today. Julia Roebuck is in attendance to ask a question.
I note that your question is related to the cultural heart, and that on today's agenda, the best option will be to take your question during the discussion at that time. So agenda item 7, Kirklees Transport Strategy. Would the Cabinet Member and officers like to present? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a few things about the transport strategy and then hand over to officers for more detail. So I'd first like to just say it's a really positive time to be bringing our first Kirklees Transport Strategy through the governance process collectively and towards adoption. There's so much opportunity for Kirklees to benefit at the moment with bus franchising and the Transpennine Route upgrade project underway, mass transit or tram in the pipeline, and the development of Wicker's LTP4 as well. And also further powers coming and further funding opportunities through our extension of our devolution process in West Yorkshire. So having our own transport strategy aligned with LTP4 will help us to embed our local priorities around sustainable transport and inclusive prosperity, and to ensure that we maximise benefit for Kirklees from external funding and regional projects. Working together with regional partners, but focused on our specific transport needs in Kirklees, where we have simultaneously low car ownership, 25% or so on average, but as low as 50% in some areas, and high reliance on car relative to the national picture, and partly due to our topography, will enhance opportunity for us to target benefit. We have higher unemployment and lower earnings than the national average, with many travelling out of district to work. These factors all point to inequality, to exclusion and to deprivation. I'm very keen that this strategy should help us to provide greater opportunity for our communities whilst also reducing our collective environmental impact, and I very much welcome input from this committee to help support these aims. We're here for Scrutiny to have a second look at our transport strategy and the consultation completed after we first came to this committee in January. Following that scrutiny and subsequent amendments, Cabinet approved going to public consultation in February, and that took place in March and April this year. The consultation was extremely successful. We had 2,112 responses, I think, but with a significant proportion, something like 1,500, also providing free text input to illustrate their concerns and interests in transport. Responses confirmed public approval of the priorities in the strategy, in particular with support for prioritisation and improvement around bus transport, including the move to publicly controlled bus services through franchising. So just finally to say there's clearly opportunity now for Scrutiny to offer further refinements and comments. Then Exec Board, will do the same, and we aim to take the final draft, to Cabinet hopefully in September, and hopefully for approval. So just to thank officers for the work they've done to produce Kirklees' first transport strategy, which I think is an excellent document, and I'll hand over now, I think, to Dave to provide some more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Crook, for that introduction. So I think we're at a pivotal moment in the development of transport across Kirklees and the wider West Yorkshire region. The creation of our new transport strategy represents a significant opportunity, not just to shape how we move around our district, but to define the ambition, the direction and the values that underpin our approach to mobility for many years to come. And that will make sure we capitalise on all those planned investment opportunities that Councillor Crook has just spoken about and deliver inclusive growth. So this strategy isn't an action plan, it's not a list of projects, it's a cohesive framework, a statement of our intent that aligns both with our local plan that's undergoing revision at the moment, but also the West Yorkshire Combined Authority emerging LTP4 that Councillor Crook mentioned. It sets out how we'll approach transport schemes, ensuring that future work remains in synergy and alignment with regional priorities to make sure we can target future funding opportunities. But importantly, it reflects the unique needs and aspirations of our district. We're at the heart, and lots of transformational transport schemes are already underway, and we've got lots coming. With the Weaver network hopefully landing in Kirklees in a couple of years' time, now's the time to ensure that we have a local strategy that is robust, forward-looking, dynamic, and owned by the council. So if we embed that strategy into our decision-making, it will help streamline our approvals, target our decision-making, strengthen our policy position, and ensure that transport contributes meaningfully to those wider goals that Councillor Cook has mentioned. And that ensures that we deliver better, greener, healthier travel for everyone. So today's session is an opportunity for Scrutiny to review the progress made since the report came earlier this year. And I'm going to hand over to Rory to give a bit more detail on what's happened since then.
So I'd like to start by thanking Scrutiny panel members for their inputs as the document was taken to yourselves in January of this year. I'd like to update on what has changed since then. We reviewed a number of the comments which had come through from the Scrutiny panel, and also I'd like to touch upon the work which was done at the consultation which Councillor Crook referred to earlier. So regarding the consultation, we had a wide-reaching comms campaign, which was funded by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which meant that we could reach communities by social media, through added marketing and publicity events, and we put a lot of work into boots on the ground campaigns where myself and colleagues went to every corner of the district to bring the conversation to them. So we had a very fruitful time discussing what was in the strategy, what people wanted to see, and encouraging them to come to the consultation to make a formal response. And as Councillor Crook mentioned there, that led to us receiving over 2,000 responses, which was a rate which we understand is very, very high for a consultation of this type. We also did receive 1,500 free text comments, and colleagues put a lot of work into reviewing every single one of those to ensure that we could understand them, categorise them, and then try and feed those inputs back into the document which is tabled in front of you today. So we're very pleased with the engagement from residents, very thankful of the support from West Yorkshire Combined Authority to be able to do such a wide-ranging consultation. And in terms of what was said and the response from the community, there was overwhelming support for the vision and the objectives within the document itself. So we ranged from around 60% through to the high 80s for each of the visions and objectives within the document. And within the free text, we analysed some of the themes which came through, which included support for better buses. There was a lot of commentary around the degradation in the bus service and the support that local people wanted to see for improving that situation, given where things have gone in the past few years with routes being pulled, with frequencies being dropped, for example. So we've reinforced our role as a council through the emerging Weaver network around how we can advocate for change in our conversations that we have with West Yorkshire Combined Authority to make sure that in any future network planning, some of those things that local people were saying about better frequencies, better first and last times, and better reliability could be fed in. Other themes included accessibility. That was a key one. We spoke to a number of people with a range of different physical disabilities, and we're pleased to report that the response rate from people who identified as having a disability was high for a consultation of this type. Other themes which came through were around safety, around the need for people to be able to get to and from work, education, for example. And as I say, we're very pleased to be able to have incorporated those comments into the document that's been put in front of you. At the last scrutiny panel in January, panel members did raise a number of themes, including accessibility. So there were a few questions about the ability for disabled people to travel around the district, and some questions about how the strategy could better support disabled people. So we've incorporated those comments within the update. Safety was another key one, about the use of, say, for example, bus stations at night time, or the perception of safety as people travel around the district. So we've embedded extra support in a policy sense for that theme. There were queries about electric vehicles as well, so we've reflected comments on EV use to make sure that our policies can support EV rollout without impacting people who find it difficult to put an EV charger into their home. That was one of the queries that was raised last time round. And then there were other queries about how we measure success of the strategy. So at the back end of the document that you'll see today, there are some reworked themes around that, around how we better communicate our outputs to our communities, how we measure success through the decisions that we make. So once these policies are adopted, how they're carried through into individual council decisions. And then also the work that we do on individual schemes as we bring those through the business case process, draw down funding and develop them out into real world built out schemes within the district. So I'd like to thank you all again and open up for any questions.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Councillor Munro.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I feel this document and strategy are very well intentioned. However, I've just got a few questions I'd just like to ask. In relation to page 96, consultation findings, you've talked about the overwhelming response from people in relation to the objectives. However, the environment objective was only 68% compared to the other objectives that was a far greater percentage. So I wondered what the reason was for that, and what you think would be the big hurdles you need to overcome to bring people on board with your environment strategy? So that's my first question. My second question relates to the public bus service and buses in particular. And I'd like to know when, there are certain things that you can control, we'll be able to control in the future under the new bus franchise system. However, will you have any control over the fleet and will it be electric? Because we still, in Huddersfield and within Kirklees, we still have diesel buses. A lot of them are refurbished, they're old, they break down, and I want to know what control the council will have on determining that we have an electric fleet to serve our residents. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question that was raised is a really important point about the support for the vision and objectives. So it was rightly raised that I think it was the high 60s, mid to high 60s around support for the environmental objective. That was the lowest of all of them, and the members' right to raise that. We do reflect on that still being, almost 2/3 support. But in terms of, I suppose, the core question of why that was the lowest, my short answer is we don't know. So people were invited to either express their support, their objection, kind of strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. So we can only report what members of the public have said. But what I can say is on the free text comments, there were a number of reservations from people who need to use their cars for day-to-day journeys, and that being a very important point about how people need to get around in parts of the district. But many of those people saying if the alternative offer was better, they would use it. So there were numerous comments from people around, for example, their lack of ability to get to work for the start of an early shift or the end of a late shift. There were comments around some of the active travel infrastructure and how certain people would like to see improvements in walking and cycling infrastructure within Kirklees. And that should some of those things be in place, people would be able to travel in a more environmentally friendly and sustainable way. So we do suggest that with the way that the strategy is written, it's written in a way which supports some of that feedback that people were giving, that the strategy supports better buses, better active travel, while at the same time acknowledging the day-to-day realities of car travel for a number of journeys that people need to make to get around the district. So we have definitely noted that was, the lowest category in terms of support, but as I say, it did receive well over 60% of support, and we have reflected upon the free text comment related to that theme, and we believe that we've reflected what members of the public have said around some of those themes about the environment and car dependency.
Thanks very much, Roy, and thanks for your question about buses. I mean, so the question is, will we have more control over fleet? The short answer is yes, absolutely. We will have complete control over the fleet. We do have an issue with age of fleet across West Yorkshire, particularly I think in our area, with a lot of the buses 12 years plus old. That means two things. It means reliability falls off, and it also means that the emissions being produced by the buses are higher than they should be. It also, in terms of customer experience, isn't ideal because the wear and tear on the internal fit out of the bus is degraded. So absolutely we will have a much higher percentage of zero emission vehicles, ZEBs, electric buses. I think it's really important that we identify within that some parts of the region are more appropriately matched to electric buses with the technology in the place where it is now than others, and there is also issues around which depots can be most easily upgraded to facilitate high percentage electric fleet within them. We are at the forefront of franchising, so in Kirklees we will be getting franchised buses sooner than other places in West Yorkshire, which is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. We will get a high percentage of electric buses. I think it's really important that people see the difference with when the Weaver network is implemented. On that end, we've got three key bus stations in Kirklees that are all either being upgraded or about to be upgraded in Heckmondwike, in Dewsbury and in Huddersfield. They will all be Weaver branded straight away, so we'll start seeing the difference as we get newer, safer, refurbished bus stations. They will show us the difference at an early stage, but I think on day one we will see a high percentage of new fleet and new zero emission fleet. We'll also have control over the inside fit out of the buses, so that's around safety. We've seen consistently through survey responses that people, and in particular women and girls, don't feel safe using public transport. If people don't feel safe, they won't use public transport, and we won't get the adoption that will support an improvement in service over time. You know, we can remove profit from the system, so we can reinvest that in serving people and communities rather than shareholders, but that doesn't in of itself improve patronage on its own. So safety in buses might be things like cameras in buses with screens so people know they're being filmed. It might be safety officers on the buses to make sure. I don't know what the measures will be. That's yet to be determined. But it's really important that we do use that control of fleet to benefit not just the emissions output but also the customer experience. So thanks for that question. There will of course still be diesel buses on the fleet from day one, but there'll be newer Euro 6 plus diesel engines with much lower emissions than the current buses and higher reliability and all the rest of it. Yeah, so the first phase of franchising that will implicate Kirklees is in 2027. So from but in the run-up to there, new infrastructure as it's installed will be Weaver branded now. So we'll start seeing Weaver branded bus stations and bus stops and all the rest of it. Once we get to franchising 2027, then we'll see the new fleet coming online. But obviously there's a lot of work that goes in ahead of that. The fleet can't just be, you know, they're not off the shelf. They need to be ordered in advance and so on. So yeah.
I've got another question actually. I'd just like to know about travel demand management. It's the statement refers to thoughtful management of vehicle access and parking controls. So could you just talk us through that, because I want to know what you mean by vehicle access to what, and parking controls. What sort of parking controls are we likely to see? Thank you.
So the policies within the strategy are worded to accommodate a wide range of specific interventions. So when we met with technical specialists, when we met with officers from across different council teams, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and when we also fed back the inputs from the community, there were a number of specific interventions which different teams raised, but the policies have been worded in a way to allow them to be future-proofed, so that they can accommodate a range of interventions in the future. So when we do look at things like vehicle access and parking management, they could include a broad range of themes. Parking management is a very important lever that councils can pull when it comes to things about regeneration aims, when it comes to facilitating different highways network management approaches within a town centre. So as I say, within the document that hasn't been specific, but it's been worded in a way that would allow for a range of interventions in future. That is in there because there's alignment there with a lot of what's coming out of the West Yorkshire LTP4. So within LTP4, the West Yorkshire documents, there is support for boosting things like bus patronage, boosting the levels of individuals who are walking and cycling as a proportion of all journeys taken. And as I say, that's one policy which can support some of those aims in a range of different ways. I don't know if you'd like to come in, Councillor Crook, on anything else around that point around vehicle access and parking management. If there's anything else on that theme that you'd like to add.
No, I don't think so, because the strategy isn't about specific policy in that sense, although I think a move towards space allocation which prioritises modal shift and alternative forms of transport is in all of our interests and aligns with our agendas around environmental impact and also in terms of reliability and access. So, within that there's opportunity to develop projects in the future which will address some of those issues and probably are implicated by your question in a more specific way. So no, modal shift isn't just walking and cycling, it's change of mode of transport. So I think we would all probably acknowledge that as we move towards our environmental commitments in 2038, we probably need to reduce the percentage of people who use car as a first choice. Not that that's anti-car, but if we make it the easy and obvious choice to get on a different mode of transport, which could be bus, could be train, could be tram in the future, could be active travel as well. And also I think we need to look at multimodal transport. So when you're talking about space allocation, ensuring that we allocate space for cycle storage, for example, so that people can do that first and last mile bit on a bicycle, should that be their preference, and then hop on a train to get to Leeds because it's a long way to cycle. I mean, that sort of facility is something that I think is really important to change behaviour in a positive way.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. A very interesting report, thank you. And it looks like this may deliver a much improved transport service for us, which I'm very much on board with. And looking forward to getting improved buses. I mean, at the moment, they seem, as you were saying, Councillor, they seem to be significantly old. It's even get to the point where it's hard to carry on a conversation on a bus now. They're so noisy. It's rattling and shaking all the time. One thing that sort of always gets sort of raised when I'm talking to local people where I live is statistically significant figures for these surveys. I wonder if you could just elaborate on why the figures sort of produce a confidence level of 99%, because when you actually look online at the population of Kirklees, it's around about, I think, 440,000 bodies. Now, I know some of those will probably be children, etc., but sort of 2,112 seems to be less than 0.5% of that population. So, to a layman like myself, it doesn't appear to be significant. But obviously, you've used something that enables you to interpret it. I just wonder if you could share that with us.
So I'll just very quickly, I mean, pleased that you appreciate the move towards newer fleet. That's really important. I think children do travel, so I think it's really important that we listen to their voices as well, and actually changing behaviour at an early stage in people's lives probably benefits them in terms of the health benefits of active travel if they embed those different behaviours from an early age, but also embeds environment benefit if they get into the habit early of using public transport. On the technical question around consultation statistics, I think I'll pass over to officers.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really important point about how far did the consultation reach and how many individuals did we reach as a proportion of the overall Kirklees population. So myself and colleagues, we worked very closely with consultation and engagement teams who specialise in growing that reach and trying to bring the conversation to as many people as possible. And about halfway through the consultation, we took the temperature of where we were at and we projected out where we thought we might get to in terms of the total figures, and some of those colleagues were, I think one of them used the expression blown away by the response rate. So we've benchmarked it against a number of different council surveys, and very often if a document or a council piece of work is policy focused and it isn't tied to a tangible building or transport route or project or something, that can suppress the engagement levels because very often there isn't always that direct tied interest between a scheme that communities either want to, have put in place or protected or campaign against. So, as I say, being a policy document, colleagues were very impressed with the response rates and with the level that we did manage to achieve. What we also did as well halfway through the consultation is we benchmarked who was responding as well. So there was demographic analysis around individuals' protected characteristics and what parts of the district they were responding from. And what that enabled us to do was to tweak the latter half of the consultation and try and reach some of those people who perhaps weren't responding at the rates that were benchmarked. So with the support that we had from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority funding, we were able to do things like social media analytics, which could target messaging popping up in certain parts of the district which had lower response rates, and target some of those areas with the demographics which had a lower response rate as well. So we were very pleased to be able to draw on that support. Normally at a time of looking at where council finances are, it wouldn't have been right for us to be spending Kirklees Council funding on that. So it was a fantastic opportunity that we could use that external West Yorkshire Combined Authority funding to have a very deep and broad conversation. What I will add as well is the work that we did on the ground. Colleagues and portfolio holders, from what I understand as well, are very proud of the efforts that were made to bring the conversation to people. So there was a team of around, I think, about 12 of us who scoured the whole district, and we were in highly trafficked areas to try and bring the conversation to people and to try and understand, interpret and help facilitate what they wanted to say into the final document. One point I would like to add just about the fleet question as well is bus fleet and accessibility was a key point which came from some of those face-to-face conversations that we had. We met with a number of disabled people or people with pushchairs who talked about the limits that are placed on them when there's only one accessible space on a bus, for example. And hearing people's stories around that means that we're allowed to then, we're enabled to take that conversation to Wicker when they're looking at the bus fleet procurement, to look at how they can design the front end of buses to make them more accessible and more flexible. That's something which has been done in Greater Manchester recently with their new B network fleet, where I think some of their buses have 3 spaces now with fold-down seats for a range of different uses if people have got luggage or are using a wheelchair-powered mobility vehicle or a pushchair. So, as I say, I think in terms of reach, we've benchmarked it against other council pieces of work, and statistically, I think the calculation there is about right, that it's kind of between 0.5 and 1% of the population. But as I say, colleagues who work in engagement were quite impressed with the reach that we were able to achieve.
Thank you. Just to pick up on that point, you've just answered my question about disability, but accessibility as well, not just for obviously girls and women in general, but also vulnerable adults as well, whether they're male or female. You've mentioned 3 spaces for wheelchair users. Is there anything that WICA would be looking at in terms of that vulnerability aspect?
That point was something which members of the community, certain members of the community, did respond to the consultation with. It was a really important point for a number of respondents. So on that theme, there were comments around safety at bus stations at night, for example. That was a concern of individual comments which myself and colleagues read through. There were questions questions around safety on vehicles as well, and I think Councillor Crook has spoken to some of the potential responses which the new fleet can respond and improve that. In terms of our new bus stations and the work that's being done on the Transpennine route upgrade, and hopefully on the Penistone line as well, we'll be able to embed what the community have said about safety and accessibility, which, as I say, is something that's right to raise because members of the community raised it in great number, so that we can, as I say, influence and try and advocate for some of the things that can improve safety, like improved CCTV, improved presence at stops and stations and things of that ilk. Design as well is another lever that can be used to try and design spaces so that there's a perception of safety, and lighting as well is something which is explicitly referred to within the policies at the back end of the document. So yeah, as I say, a very important point to raise, and thank you for raising it. And as I say, a number of individuals who responded did raise those points, and we've tweaked some of the policies to respond to that on things like lighting and on safety of public transport as well.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks as well, officers, for the reply. It is very detailed. On page 19, it says one of the measures of success would be a comparison of click-through rates from the survey interface to completed surveys. I'm not sure if we've measured, for example, the number of completed surveys by the method at which people find out about the survey. So, for example, the number of people who access the survey via digital ad or through an in-person consultation event. I'm not sure if we've got that information, because we do have information about the cost per click, for example, but that only tells us how many people actually accessed the survey, not how many people actually went through the entire process of filling it through.
Apologies there for the need to confer with my better informed colleague. Yeah, what we do have is information on the click-through rate from social media. So we have that as one set of figures, and then we also have the overall response rate for the consultation. So what we can perhaps take away and look at providing is what the proportionality is between the individuals that came through from social media onto the webpage and then the overall number of responses. But it might be the case that some of the web kind of back-end data processing wasn't sophisticated enough to pull all of that through. Yeah, always keen to learn lessons for consultations in the future, and I think that's quite an important point that we can raise for how we do consultation, again, to look at what conversations we had where, and then what proportion of those different types of conversation, either the in-person events, the social media analytics, or the say for example the press releases and that type of thing, what proportion came from which route, so that we can better understand how to I suppose grow that reach in future.
Thank you, Chair. It's good that you've got that information, because it's quite it's quite difficult to measure, I think, the success of these surveys sometimes, because obviously the measure of success is the number of people that have done the whole survey rather than gone through onto Facebook, but it's not always easy to get that information. One sort of point on the actual transport strategy itself, if I can just find it, apologies. One of the things that has happened, and this is, I think, unashamedly a parochial point, but it does have some effect upon kind of the surrounding area. One of the things that's happened recently in my ward is the removal of direct train services from Slowett and Marsden stations to Leeds. You now have to change at Huddersfield, which is something that people bring up with us quite a lot in person. Another thing that we've been working with Slowett and Marsden Action on Rail Transport is after the Transpennine route upgrade is finished, having at least 2 trains per hour from Slough and Marsden Station. At the moment, we don't have that during the day. There's a kind of a small portion of the morning when that does happen, but not throughout the entire day. It'd be really helpful if we could get. It does mention kind of increased frequency and capacity on our railways within the actual strategy, but it'd be helpful if officers can continually kind of like bring that up with Wicker officers and with the government when they're meeting with them, just because, you know, it's not just about something that affects my ward as well. It's still the closest station to places like Meltham and so on. So it's something that, yeah, is really important to the local economy as well. So it's just a point that I'd like to raise.
I just want to reassure you that is being discussed in Wicker. I've brought that up with Tracy directly. I know Matthew, our transport spokesperson, has brought that up in Transport Committee as well, so it is being looked at. And I think the 2 trains per hour point is really important and something that we would have an ambition to deliver on other lines in the area as well. And the Penistone line in particular, that would be something we'd like to move to. Could I make a very quick point about the accessibility question that you asked? I just wanted to add to that to reassure you. I mean, so in terms of things like bus station design, that's something we can physically see, that we can design to make sure it's accessible. But in terms of bus access, and Rory mentioned the point about having 3 spaces, but how we actually capture whether that's enough is really important. And I want to reassure you that's something we're discussing at Wicker, because if you stop the bus in Home Firth, for example, and you can't get on the bus because the spaces 2, 3, whatever there is, are already taken up, we don't measure that because the ticket isn't bought, so the person with a disability is not measured as not having got on the bus. So looking at ways that we can capture that data and ensure that the provision is sufficient is something we are looking at. And just to be clear, that is definitely our responsibility as the Transport Authority, as Wicker, to make sure that we are serving community in the right way and to the right level.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add some detail to what was said there about Slough and Marsden and some of the issues that were raised. The West Yorkshire Rail Strategy sets out a long-term ambition to achieve 2 trains an hour on all routes, and that's something which, in the conversations that we're having with the Combined Authority and with the Transpennine route upgrade teams, we're reiterating, and we understand the importance of the jump from 1 train an hour to 2 trains an hour, in terms of mode shift, in terms of people's confidence in the service and confidence to be able to get to and from where they want to go. On that, as Councillor Crook has said there, I think the intention is, from a Network Rail long-term planning sense, to achieve 2 trains an hour on that route, and that's something which officers are actively working to keep on the agenda and to reinforce in the emerging new context that we're facing with Great British Railways, with the change from the current franchise model into a new nationally organised government approach under Great British Railways. We are also having conversations with neighbouring authorities, so not just within West Yorkshire, but also with colleagues in Oldham and other parts of Greater Manchester about the tunnel tax, for example, so the price differential between points west of Slough and Marsden and Huddersfield and the rest of Kirklees and points east, and the impact that can have on, say, for example, mode shift, people choosing to drive that journey because of the ticket price, and also because of some of the issues that can create with parking locally, where people will park to one side of the ticketing boundary, creating what we understand to be parking issues around Slough and Marsden stations.
Did you want a supplementary? Of Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just get it up again. Yeah, what specific metrics will you show that the strategy is actually shifting people towards public transport and active travel? Because there's no methodology in the report, and there's no actual frequency on how often you're going to report. And will the reporting be public?
So on reporting, that's an area where we've put forward this strategy as a Kirklees policy document, a Kirklees output, which will support and align with the West Yorkshire LTP4. So within the West Yorkshire Local Transport Plan 4, which is out for consultation at the moment, there are embedded targets around things like bus punctuality, around things such as the mode shift of where West Yorkshire Combined Authority and the Mayor want to get West Yorkshire to in terms of the proportion of people walking and cycling, taking the bus, in terms of journey time reliability for some of those modes. So a decision has been taken not to duplicate any of that within our strategy, but to support it and to ensure that our policies enable that overarching West Yorkshire approach towards planning for transport and towards measuring success around the kind of very transport specific metrics and outputs. In terms of how we review our work, what we're intending to do, should the strategy be adopted, is work very, very closely with officers from across the council to make them aware how the policies will shape some of their decisions going forward. And then we expect that the policies within the document are then embedded into council business as usual and will be reflected in individual decisions around whether to approve or otherwise schemes, in terms of decisions around how we try and bring some of the single settlement money that's been agreed between national government and West Yorkshire into our patch through some of the schemes that we bid for, and through some of the decisions that we're making, say for example at Cabinet and other decision-making stages, as I say, as a business-as-usual approach for Kirklees going forward. Some of the metrics that we do talk about when we talk about transport-related social exclusion, when we talk about activity rates, when we talk about unemployment, they exist away from a vacuum of not just transport. There are so many other factors at play at a macro level there, and officers did reflect upon whether there would be potential for the strategy to try and measure and monitor some of those things. But given that our one document is part of a multi-piece kind of framework of things that can happen in the private sphere and in the governmental sphere as well, in a West Yorkshire level, in a national government level, the decision was taken not to dedicate kind of scant council resource to a specific kind of monitoring regime, which, as I say, couldn't always be tied to the success or failure of our one document in that wider context.
Thank you. Do members have any more questions? Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to officers for the report. We've heard about passenger transport and cars, etc., but I just want a quick one about freight. Has any thought been given to a charging network for electric trucks to encourage hauliers to use EVs for their urban deliveries?
The point around innovation and freight and electrifying the freight network is something which is at the forefront of where we expect to see change in the transport field over the next few years. When we have considered EV networks, the EV policies which are within the document do apply to all transport modes. So what we've said within the policy there is that we'd support the rollout of electric vehicles, and that the council will encourage the development of networks to support the charging of those vehicles. So those would apply to freight as they would to the bus fleet, to private cars, for example, as well. One of the things which we've purposefully not done is been specific about the types of intervention and how that will be done. So I think at the last scrutiny panel that we had in January, EVs were one of the topics which we discussed in quite a bit of detail, and the way that electric vehicle charging networks are going to come forward will probably be led by the market with some public support. So we're working very closely with colleagues from within Kirklees and within West Yorkshire to try and, where there are market failures, to try and bring in more EV charging infrastructure into the district. But as I say, we've shied away from the specifics around how that might look, because that policy could become very outdated very quickly, the way that things have changed in that realm in recent years. There are some policies as well around freight separately, so not relating to EV, around council support for moving goods around the district, and for how we support freight operators to do that in an efficient way. And tied to that as well as some of the policies that we've got around efficient network management, and the work that the council can do to support our traffic networks through things like traffic light control, for example, through things like bus priority and different other measures as well, which can improve traffic flow and how we manage our networks. So, as I say, there's not a specific policy on EV for freight, but I am quite confident that with the policies that we've got, the support for both of those things in an individual sense.
Thank you. Do any members excuse me. Do any members have any additional questions? I'd like to thank the officers and Councillor Crook for your presentation today. Thank you. We'll move on to our Cultural Heart update. If officers and Cabinet member would like to please present our next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is one of our regular updates, so Dave will go through a few slides for you. I haven't got many, but as I said, this is one of our regular updates, and I believe that Scrutiny has been invited to go have a look at the progress after this meeting. So I can encourage you all to go and have a look and see how fantastic the progress is, and you'll be able to see how the vision, how it's now playing out. So, said Dave, we'll now run through a series of very short slides to bring you up to date where we are.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me there, Chair. So, as Councillor Turner said, I'll talk you through some slides. So, good morning again. I'm pleased to provide an update on our Cultural Heart, which hopefully you're all aware, key part of our Huddersfield Blueprint and one of the Council's flagship regeneration programmes. So in terms of what this set of slides will talk through, summary of the programme's background and progress, a quick image of the master plan layout, step through the decisions that were taken at Cabinet January this year, which was focused on Phase 2, which is the museum and gallery, and then some updates on Phase 1, which is the food hall and library, and then Phase 2, before a brief discussion around future planning and delivery. And then finally, I'd like to draw attention to the latest newsletter before opening up to questions and discussion. So in terms of a summary, there's a couple of slides on this, so hopefully all aware, but the blueprint launched back in June 2019, identified 6 target areas for transformation across the town, and the cultural heart is central to that vision. It aligns with the council's focus on investment, regeneration and place, and cultural heart is a named programme within the blueprint. So in terms of it's been under development for some time. Earlier this year, January 2025, really positive step was taken where we established the Cultural Heart Mobilisation Steering Group. So that's an internal set of all our different services working together to coordinate the budgets and preparations needed for when the Cultural Heart scheme starts to go live. In terms of governance and decision making, monthly reporting continues to a programme board and to Councillor Turner as Regeneration portfolio holder. And worth noting that the project continues, but Cabinet has taken decisions over the last year to reallocate some funding away from the Cultural Heart construction budget to support other capital priorities. And obviously that was discussed at Budget Council in March. In terms of the second summary slide, so and just to build on that last point about governance, so progress is reviewed through the gateway process. So it comes to Cabinet particular gateways, and that gateway process allows both a sort of strategic alignment, but also ensures approvals are taken at the right time. And the sort of phased approach to this scheme it gives us that ability to look and make changes as needed. The next Cabinet report is targeting for September, and the main focus being on the next steps in terms of delivering the museum and galleries. So that would be known as the Phase 2 scheme, Gateway 4, which is where we conclude where we are with detailed design and target moving into construction. In terms of scrutiny, the last report came September last year, and that included a site visit, and we're going to do another site visit with members of scrutiny after this visit. And I think an important point, the second to last bullet point there, just there's a lot of communication and engagement happening around the scheme as well. So that remains strong. There's an ongoing comms campaign there. There's lots of events, and I think that's really starting to create a positive atmosphere and profile around the scheme. And I'll touch on that in the newsletter at the end. In terms of the master plan, hopefully everyone's aware, but as illustrated here, Phase 1 in the centre is the food hall, the new library, and the adjacent square. Phase 2 is the museum and gallery, and then the other plots are identified as plots at the current time. So we've got Queen Street, the park, and the venue. And I mentioned before, sort of a phased approach gives the council and cabinet flexibility, and we are undertaking a phase-in review at the moment, and that's nearing completion and will be reported to cabinet in September. Just a summary of some of the key decisions that were taken. I won't go through all these, Chair, but in terms of some of the key decisions that were taken at Cabinet earlier in the year around Phase 2, Gateway 3, so that approved the finalisation of the design at that stage, committed funding for Phase 2 to move towards Gateway 4, delegated authority for the enabling works through a pre-construction services agreement, and delegated the authority to instruct relevant works on that. I'll touch on some of those on the update slide. Authority to continue with the existing professional team and allocating resources and draw down of that circa 5.6 million to undertake those activities that are listed sort of 1 to 5, and bring which obviously brought the committed budget up to nearly 79 million for that phase, and also approved reallocation of some funding for pre-construction costs, so furniture, fixtures, equipment, etc., and to some operational services. And then another key thing being the authority to undertake a review of the venue. So in terms of a bit of an update on So this is phase one, so the library, the food hall and the square. So BAM construction, been working on this for a year. And the early stages were unsurprisingly a lot of demolition, basement works. But the important thing now is that the project's moved from demolition into building back. It's building out now. And recent progress, the concrete floor's been replaced. The external glass and wall systems for the food hall are in place. And that photo on the right there is probably from about a month ago. So during the site visit today, you'll see that the glass is now largely in place. So you can see there's significant progress now. And the intention is that the food hall will be operated by a third-party tenant. Marketing started on that beginning of the year, and we're aiming to conclude that by the end of the calendar year. And a completion for the construction work is June, as you can see it there, next year, and for the facilities to be operational by summer. So some real progress there. In terms of phase two, so this is the museum and gallery, some of the key milestones. So I touched on the cabinet report that came to that was taken in January of this year to progress to the next stage. The target is for construction work to start on site in Q2 next year. And then for the construction to complete back end of 27, early 28, and for the facilities to then be operational a year after that. The important thing on phase two is that we're in the sort of early pre-construction stage period. So that's all about looking at design review and really, most importantly, de-risking the building that is a grade 2 listed complex building, removing the asbestos being a key activity, and a series of other surveys that help us understand how complex the building is to make sure we're de-risking the delivery of that. And then in terms of looking ahead, in terms of the master plan overall, and there's been a relay of what was presented previously to scrutiny, but planning, listed building consent for the overall master plan were approved at planning committee back in March 23. I mentioned the venue, so we've got the venue review ongoing at the moment, and soft market testing linked to that due to complete by the end of this calendar year. The Queen Street plot, exploring opportunities there, what the development site could be, so things like hotel, residential, office use, so they continue to be investigated. An important note there that the current appraisals identify a level of gap funding to bring those forward. I've mentioned the phasing, and that being a sort of strategic part of how we bring the different elements of the scheme forward. And that's probably on that slide. And then this, you hopefully have seen this image before, but the sort of aerial view captures, I think, the ambition and the scale of what our cultural heart is about. A transformative project right in the centre of town. There's a lot of new buildings, but it isn't about buildings. It's about creating a vibrant, more inclusive town centre that reflects the cultural identity of Huddersfield as well as its future aspirations. And before we move into questions and discussions, Chair, if this works, are you happy? I just hopefully people are aware of the newsletter. So this is the most recent one from summer this year. It can be accessed on the Cultural Heart website. I'd encourage you all to open it, review it, share it. It gives a good snapshot of what's happening at the moment, some of the engagement. So if I just scroll down, it talks about progress, talks about some of the recent activities. So Kirklees Pride, the Connected by Pattern Woven Festival and the workshops there. And if I scroll further down, just as another example, the event that Huddersfield Unlimited recently worked with the Cultural Heart BAM team to bring the community and business community together as part of an event there. So there's a lot of stories on this newsletter that I think start to reflect what the programme is about. It's not just about construction. It's not physical transformation. It's the more cultural, social and economic regeneration of the town. And I think there's some good stories on here that help to reflect our ambition. That's it from me on the slides, Chair. So open it up to questions, comments and reflections, unless there's anything Councillor Turner wants to add to what I've said first.
No, thanks, Dave. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. We decided we didn't want to do too many slides, but just have a few very detailed slides so people could get a view where we are. But along with Dave, happy to take any questions.
Thank you both. Before I kick off with questions from members, we'll just invite Julia Roebuck from the member of the public like to ask you a question. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I'll read it out. So, seeing as our cultural heart is about far more than bricks and mortar and is about people and place to build on and celebrate the character and culture of our diverse and exciting town, how will the existing creative organisations on the piazza be included in the plans, particularly the Queen Street plot? And is there any potential to work with the council to create a business plan for space which will then ensure long-term support for the existing creative ecosystem?
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the question. And I totally agree. I think highlighting the importance of creativity, culture, community and shaping Huddersfield identity really important. So, and I absolutely recognise the value that the existing creative and cultural organisations represented, some of which represented here, bring to the town, and particularly those that are based around the Piazza and Queen Street. So I understand the value and the role that your groups and others have played in animating that space during, while the construction's happening. And I think it's really starting to build momentum for what the cultural heart is about. But what I would say is the meanwhile uses of those units was always intended as meanwhile and interim arrangements ahead of the larger redevelopment that we talked about. But having said that, I'm really keen that we work together to explore options that could support a creative ecosystem, which I really like that phrase, in the longer term in the town. So I would say I'm committed to investigating those options with relevant organisations and groups. So what could work? So I'd say the meanwhile uses are as they are interim, but I'm definitely committed to us exploring what options exist to support creative organisations around the town. And I think through the cultural heart and our wider plans for the town, we want to create that vibrant culture, art, leisure, nightlife offer that that boosts our local economy, attracts visitors of all ages and from all places. So yeah, I'd really welcome conversations, which I know colleagues sitting next to you started with some of my colleagues. So I think continue those conversations on exploring options would be my answer to that. Councillor Turner might want to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I totally support everything Dave said, and looking across there's quite a few people I have regular conversations with, shall we say, and I know our senior directors have been in conversation with some of the organisations as well. So we absolutely want to try and incorporate in the future the more cultural type things, but at this moment in time, we've got the meanwhile use, and it's what happens with the Queen Street plot. So we're still working on that, but absolutely want to engage with you. And I know our cultural team also engages with you on a regular basis. So absolutely we want to see how we can incorporate all those things into this cultural art. Otherwise it doesn't quite become a cultural art, does it, in some ways. So we will continue to work with you and try and find solutions. Absolutely.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, well, I could talk all afternoon about this, but that's not what I'm here for. It'd be just great to either get some meetings in the diary and kind of talk about the nuts and bolts of actually how we make that happen. I know that we've got the amazing support that we've had throughout the temporary contemporary programme. The organisations that are left now, the kind of 4 of us that are left there, is a kind of reduction of probably over 100 different organisations that you've supported. So to have a kind of legacy and a sort of social innovation piece around where that is leading to, and all the success and all of the value that we know that brings to the town, to be able to embed that within for a longer term strategy. So I totally get that the meanwhile spaces were only ever intended to be meanwhile, but so much good and so much social value has come out of that. To get to actually how we can embed that for long term would be brilliant to best serve all of the communities that use us on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
Perhaps just add to that the fact that we're phasing it and we can move the phases around as and when they need to be moved around means we can change the tact. I mean, originally it was 5 phases with a very specific timeline. We're now in a position where we probably move that around a little bit, so we can have those ongoing dialogues as to how we introduce different things at different phases of the project. So that flexibility is really important to us, and we'll have to wait and see. We're not knocking anything down just yet because we've still got boots, etc. in there, but there will come a point where we have to address the issue of the piazza, but that is a little way off yet.
Thank you. Councillor Munro?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've just got a few questions. My first question, the library building is Grade 2 listed. I know the council is working on a design review to incorporate cost savings. Will the new design compromise the special character of the original building? That's my first question. I'll carry on from the second question. Can you explain why you aim to save on costs? And could you provide an idea of how much you aim to save or need to save? Question 3. Will councillors and the public be able to comment on the new design before they're approved? Question 4, will the building be stripped out before approval of the plans of the new design plans is given? And how realistic is the timeline for phase 2 and the conversion of the library building? I note a huge amount of money of funding has already been committed to phase 2 Gateway 3. So I'm just wondering why you need to make cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You're right. It is a Grade 2 listed building. It will remain from the external view. It will remain as it is because obviously that's the listing. Obviously there'll be an extension, sympathetic extension put on there, but the basic structure of it will remain the same. Savings. We're always looking to make savings. We always have to look to revalue engineer all our projects because, as you're well aware, that building inflation, general inflation is quite high. So what was a plan 5 years ago is now not necessarily the case. So we're constantly looking at revalue. What we refer to as revalue engineering is basically looking at cost savings. You're right, a significant amount of money has been committed to phase 2 and through Gateway 3, and that work is ongoing. How realistic? Those are the timelines we have now. It's a historic building. We deal with lots of historic buildings. We set out with a timeline that is based on the best evidence we have at the time. Like anything within a historic building, sometimes there are things in there that you didn't know that was there that can cause delays, but we're fairly optimistic that that timeline is achievable in this case.
Supplementary?
Sorry, I've just. Did you actually respond to the? Will the public be allowed to comment on the new design plans? Sorry, I don't think you did.
If it's a planning permission issue, if it's going back for planning permission, of course they will.
Thank you. Thank you. This is about future phases of the venue. I just wanted to say you probably heard about the Peace Hall in Halifax, which is an open air venue with barricade fencing at the entrances. Could something similar be done in the new public realm space as opposed to building a new venue building?
You can do it, we'll see what happens to the new public outside space. The reason about building a venue is it's England. It rains a lot. It gets very cold. And if you look at the problem with the Peace Hall is it puts on about, I think it's about 33 events a year or 33 gigs. And the rest of the year, sadly, it's pretty much empty. It's whilst it does have a retail space in there, that's not being taken up. So that loses, which is well documented and is subsidised by the council, to £800,000 a year, because it can only do things in a very short time period. With a venue, which is be a multi-purpose venue to put on not just concerts or gigs or that sort of thing, other things like other events, concerts, along with conferences. Possibly people may want to hire it for a large wedding or a party, whatever. So the fact that it's flexible use means we can use it more often, and that will generate more income, and that will generate hopefully much more income for the operator, because we will operate this. We are already talking to operators. We've got significant amount of people interested in operating on our behalf. So that's the reason we need an internal venue. The space, as I said, we're on the review. The first phase of the review came back and said, yes, we're still on the right track, and the more detailed results will be here before Christmas. But yes, all the evidence points to we need an indoor venue, because, as I said, it's not great sat watching a band in the snow.
Come back on that and just say we have got Lawrence Battley Theatre where, there's lots of events take place there.
Absolutely, but the Lawrence Battley is limited to, is it about 400, 450? That, as we well know, if you look at how these venue operates, is not sustainable without external subsidy from somewhere else, because you can't sell enough tickets at that size venue. This will be to 2,000 to 2,500. That brings in significant amounts of money, which will cover the cost for the operators.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a question on phase one. It's probably a level of detail, because you've mentioned a tenant for the food court. Have you looked at, I presume you would have done, but lots of different cultures in terms of getting the food in. I find it works really well in some cities, and it worked really well when we have that in the town centre as well.
So we are out to tender. We are looking at operators. We have conversations ongoing with the provider at the moment, who operates facilities such as this across the north of England. We've actually been in a site visit one late one Friday afternoon, so early evening, about the offer they provide. And you're absolutely right. The intention is that this won't be, how can I put it, burger and chips. This will attract a wide range of cultures, wide range of different food products. If we based on the model that we've seen, that they operate really successfully, it will bring a huge amount of different cuisines into the space. And the fact that the way it's designed, or the way it should be designed when we get to the final bits, is it de-risks for food operators. So if I wanted to open a restaurant in Huddersfield tomorrow morning, I'll probably have to look at a quote of £500,000. By the time I pay some rent, put all special kitchens in, done the marketing, got staff, etc. It's a significant investment to open a restaurant, and within a market that, as we well know, is uncertain at the moment. But the way we intend to operate this, we de-risk that. We will provide, or the operator will provide, a kitchen. So all they need to do is provide their expertise, but the facility will be already there. So it de-risks that. So that means someone who's perhaps at this moment in time busy away in the kitchen making some fantastic food, but doing it from home, who hasn't got the money to go out and open a new restaurant, can possibly come in and do that. And that's what we found in the one we operated. We looked at these small people doing small businesses can suddenly expand their business and bring a different type of food to the operator. So absolutely, I'd be very disappointed if we haven't got sort of 10, 15 different types of food in there. I really would. I've seen how it operates. It's really good.
Thank you. That's really positive. Councillor Bellamy?
Yeah. Really simple question. What are the top 3 current risks to the project, and what contingency plans are ready if they occur? For example, you found more asbestos than you expected in museum and gallery, so there you go.
When you say top 3 risks, is it to the whole project, a specific part of the project? Because as I said, we're phasing it, so we know what the risks are with phase 1, because we're now on with that. we think we've identified, as you quite rightly point out, there was more asbestos in phase 2 in the library, which is not unusual these days, unfortunately, because it was a wonder material and stuffed it everywhere, didn't they? So it's always a problem with asbestos. But as I say, is it the whole project or a specific part of the project?
Looking at sort of phase 1 and 2, because they're next into it.
Well, as I said, phase 1, we as you saw on the slide, we have an opening date for phase 1, and the last time I spoke to the developers, they were still confident that they can achieve that. As I say, I would recommend you go down and have a look at it. You'll see great progress has been made, as Dave pointed out. We've finished demolishing things, we're actually building things back now. It's quite significant when people start putting glass in. That shows a real positive commitment from them, because I'm not sure about putting glass in loads of builders wandering around, but anyway, the glass is going in, or it's all in now. It's a couple of weeks since I was last there. So, as I said, phase 1 is moving significantly forward now with that committed opening date. Phase 2, we haven't got into contract yet with anyone. Hopefully we will get into contract with BAM. As I said, there is work ongoing inside that you can't see, doing the strip out, etc., the asbestos and other pre-start works, which is being prepared at the moment.
Supplementary? Sorry, Chris.
2 questions, if I may. Budgets for these sort of projects always go in one direction, which is upwards generally. I notice on the summary that the council reallocated funds to another capital project. How significant is this? Because no doubt this will be looking for other budgets later on. Second part of my question is, given that this venue is going to have quite a good take-up, we hope, in numbers, there will be a need for more parking, especially if they're late-night venues, because there's bus services, etc., stop quite early, certainly where we live. How is this tied into the parking requirements for the venue when it comes along, and then into the transport strategy as well? Are they linked together by somewhere?
We're always looking at the demand for parking. Luckily now we've got an extra 650 places now that Kingsgate's open on an evening. Parking on an evening is increased by the fact that people are not at work, so the spaces that get used during the day are freed up on an evening. And one of the options that we're looking at, as Dave pointed out on the Queen Street plot, is that it may be viable to put a car park on there. So it may be hotel, maybe offices, it may be car park. All those things are now in the mix as to what we do with that site. And we're constantly looking around town for other opportunities where we may need extra car parking and where we can put that. But car parking is always a bit tricky because you've got to be careful. You don't want to build too many car parks because that puts a drain on your resources. I'm not going to name certain local authorities that built loads of car parks now and can't afford them because nobody uses them. So there's always a balance to getting car parks right. And we're constantly looking at that. Don't forget the venue's a good few years off, so it gives us an opportunity to assess that. And hopefully, as my colleague rightly pointed out, with bus franchising, a better bus service, I'm optimistic that we won't need just as many car parking spaces because we'll have a better bus, fingers crossed. Sorry, I can't do it, I've got swollen hands. But with a better bus service, a new improved bus station, we would encourage people to come into town to these venues to use public transport, whether it be Transpennine when that's finished, whether it's the bus service. And of course, once you come into town, you can have a couple of extra drinks rather than driving home. So that all puts money in the pocket, in the pot, doesn't it? So it's encouraging people to come in and enjoy themselves, take part in the facilities that's there, use the bars, restaurants, etc. So that's all in the mix at the moment.
Supplementary?
Did you cover the budget?
Budget's always flexible with these things. We have moved some money around. Don't forget some of these projects are a good few years off and we're constantly looking at how we can do that. That's why we might rephase some of those to bring some spent forward and then we can move forward from that, and then we may, as I said, we may move the park phase forward a little bit, but we'll see. The budgets are always always under pressure, always been analysed, but we believe that when we need to move the money around or move money into completing the project, the money will be there and available for us.
Do you have a supplementary? Alfie.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the food hall, I don't know if we're looking at increasing opportunities for local businesses, food producers, farmers, for example, to trade or to be tenants at the site, and is there anything we can do to promote them?
Absolutely. As I said, the venue we went to look at with the person we're talking about being the operators, that was they did. As I said, small fruit producers, small people who were doing food, who couldn't afford to necessarily expand, were introduced to. So the lot of them were local that were given that opportunity to expand their business and move into there. So absolutely, I'd love to see many, because the small outlets and the small kitchens, it won't attract, I don't know, Nando's or whatever. It won't attract the big boys. It is designed to encourage small businesses to either expand or open up in a space there. So absolutely, I'm anticipating that most of the operators will be locally based who want to look for a wider audience for their products.
Supplementary?
Thanks, Jess. That's really positive to hear. Just touch upon this. I think you touched upon this in the answers to previous questions, but about the Queen Street plot. Do we have? I mean, what's the latest that I heard about that was that we'd had. I think we'd put some bid in for the government for Greenhead College to move into the site, or we don't know if we've got any further in terms of what our uses for that would be.
So there was discussions probably, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, 18 months, 2 years ago, about Greenhead College expanding in there. They put a bid into government for the funding, and we were very keen to develop that with them. Unfortunately, the government at the time turned that money down, so they haven't got the money to expand into that site. They were very keen, but as I say, it did rely on government money, and the then government at the time, which is not the same government as now, didn't give them the money.
Supplementary. Do any members have any more questions? I thank, sorry, Councillor Banther.
Thank you. You say moving money around or bringing money forward for the scheme. How does that affect the rest of the scheme towards the end of it? Does that mean we go out for more funding, or do we have a lesser scheme, or does some part of it not get delivered?
No, this is going to be delivered. This is you've seen the phases there. We will deliver this within relative timescales. So we will review the venue ongoing at the moment to prove that business case. So no, we will deliver this over a time period.
You have a supplementary. Any more questions? I would like to thank officers and Councillor Turner for your presentation today. And I'd like to thank everyone in attendance, and we will be going on our site visit. Thank you.